Welcome back. We are live for the Lever Up Your Life show, where I bring on guests to share their strategies and secrets for leveraging their knowledge, resources, and contacts to lever up their life. Super excited to have Jeremy on. Welcome to the show, my friend.
Thanks, man. First time guest. Maybe I'll come back at some point if I'm good enough.
Yeah, dude, that'd be
Get
great. I'd love
reinvited.
to have you back. Well, here's the thing, man. I have your backgrounds. It'll be in the description when we repost this, but it's like, dude, I feel like there's not a lot that you haven't done in real estate. And correct me if I'm wrong, but pretty much all in Tampa Bay for what, your 10 plus years in real estate now?
Yeah. Yep. So I was born in Orlando, but I moved to Ruskin when I was like 2. So basically grew up here in the local area. So one of the few sort of natives. And everything's mostly been Tampa Bay based. And I think that's, it's been such an exciting time to be in the industry in this area too, which you can probably attest to from like landing up here,
Yeah,
even though you're
dude.
on the way out. But yeah, dude, it's just a cool time. So exciting to see everything that's been developing and just been fun to see the growth in the area, especially from being here for so long.
Yeah, dude, if you picked a 10-year timeline to be in Tampa, I think you pretty much freaking nailed it for being in real estate here.
Yeah.
I am like to your point, I'm heading out the door, going to keep most of my business in Tampa, I'm sure. But I just like think about Tampa and I'm like, dude, I don't know if there's a lot of better places if you wanted to grow a business, specifically a real estate business. It's just there's so much collaboration, so many young people, so much development, so much opportunity. And, this isn't Seattle. This isn't Austin. Like, you can still get into a deal without that much money. And speaking of, I know you got into your first deal without that much money back in 2013?
Yeah, dude. So
Dude, tell me about it.
Yeah. So it was actually a small mobile home deal that just did some private lending on for it was like 2% or 10% for return in like 2 months or something, and it was a really small amount, so it was like 10 grand, right? So it's like
Go.
I think the challenge too for people that want to invest is like, if you don't have at least 50K to put together, it's really hard to find a place to put your money. But so I did that and I was like, all right, cool. So I had always been reading books about investing and wanted to like do that. So I knew when I got out of the military, I'd just like transition into real estate. But that was a good like sort of intro into it. And it gave me some perspective, and it was just very obviously like super passive, didn't do anything except wire some money.
How did you know it was like legit after you sent the wire?
It was somebody I knew through high school, and so somebody I had a prior relationship with that was like doing it already full time, or I learned from his parents and stuff as well. And so it was comfort level there. Obviously, somebody I knew, went to school with, and it was relatively small amount. Well, I mean at the time it was still like a lot for what I had put together, but it was like, made it comfortable.
Yeah. Dude, I'll just say like I sent somebody 18 grand the other day, and I'll make like $600 on that money in 10, 15 days. Like, it's not crazy, but you keep your ears to the ground. I felt this was like a very good opportunity. You don't need that much money to invest. Like, I'm not saying $500 you can really make a difference in your life, but
cool. Oh yeah, dude. It's like, for sure. It's like, pays for car bill for 2 months or something.
Yeah. Exactly.
And that's the thing too, is like, just like I mentioned, it's like, when people come out to the meetups that we host, or like people we just interact with, and they're like, oh, I want to get started and stuff, it's like one of the first things, like what do you have to put together now is, to understand the sort of the strategy and like what best way to point you to, because it's really difficult to put any money to work if, you don't have at least 50 or 100 to either lend and cover a rehab or something. So, it just makes it so like even being able to find an opportunity to like place that is pretty cool. It's, not everybody knows like, hey, who needs a little bit here and there, and gives you flexibility and then gives you a chance to do something and make a better return maybe than, what the banks or whatever are giving 4%, 4%, 5%.
Dude, $500 on 18 grand in 10 days that's a great annualized return. Like,
it was like,
I'm not gonna lie,
1,000% over a year or whatever.
Yeah, that's the beauty of points. It's like, if you get things paid off quick, the way percentages work, annualized, it makes it look amazing. So after you do the small private loan, make a little bit of money, you get out of the military, and then it was like do the typical route of being an agent.
Yeah, so I studied before, so I knew I was going to get out. I had like my bachelor's and stuff, but I wasn't intending to like use it for, like employment or whatever. But I
Yeah.
just got it because the GI Bill was free. And so, yeah, I basically had studied, passed the exam for a real estate license before I got out. So as soon as I landed, this was, January 2015, went ahead and got the license here, just started doing general sales. And for about a year and a half, just doing buyers, sellers. I wholesaled a few deals too.
Nice.
And then just, got the broker's license about 2 years after that. And that's when we opened up the brokerage. Then a year after that, we did the property management. So yeah, it was just like, I want to be in real estate somehow. Let me just start getting the license and sort of figure it out. So that was kind of how we started the brokerage piece, was understanding the investment side. So partnering with Greg
Yeah.
Simpson, like he was flipping, he was full sailing, didn't have the license. I had the license. So it was that classic, like, if they don't want the cash offer, we just list it, right? That's what
Yep.
sort of the whole theme. And so that's sort of what kicked us off, and just, did some other things throughout there, but that was how it kind of initially got into it. So yeah, it was very purposeful, kind of intentional, getting into the sales side and real estate specifically.
So I don't want to breeze past this. I want to make sure I'm right when I see this, but you guys had 40 agents in the brokerage?
Yeah, that's what we have now. And so we
Oh, you
changed
have
some
that
models.
right now?
Yeah, so we'd gotten up to even like 75 at one point, but different models, right? You sort of learn over the years what model works best: split, flat fee, how much training do you want to do? Do you want to offer no
Right.
training, no coaching? Like, there's a bunch of models. Sometimes the market, I think, dictates to, when the market's tough, everyone just leaves to go to the lowest cost a lot of times. So,
Yeah.
do you have a monthly fee? Don't you? So just tried stuff over the years. I feel like we have stuff pretty dialed in now. It's a little bit more hands off for us and stuff. But yeah, we have about 40 agents, and most of those are active. We have a few like referral agents, but yeah, so that's given us good perspective. And then, the management company will generate some listings throughout the year too.
Right.
Like, I don't do any sales anymore, but my broker's license holds for both the companies. And so, so yeah, it's kind of like, it's a nice to have. It's gives us some deal flow here and there, either from agents or, networking meetups and stuff from other agents.
Yeah.
Either sales or property management stuff. So,
I mean, maybe I'm wrong, because I feel like you're humble in nature, but I look at like a team of 40 agents, mostly active. Let's just say like 35 are active. Like, isn't that like a pretty big team?
yeah, I mean, it's a pretty good size. I think, like, it's probably that,
It's like,
that
it's
typical,
okay. It's nice to have.
well, it's like that 80-20, or, I mean, this in the lending business, right? It's like, it's probably worse than that. It's probably like 90-10, or like people that actually crush it at full time, like doing really some real volume, right? But it's like, yeah, you get people that are part-time, full-time, mixture, whatever, they want to be doing. Some of them are just investors that have their license. So it's not like they really do sales in general. It's just like for their own properties and stuff. So yeah, good mix. But yeah, it's a decent size. We sort of have it structured in a way where, we have some support. Some, people aren't calling me for all sorts of like transaction questions, but yeah, it's been a good thing. Like at this point, we opened that specifically in 2016. So coming up on 10 years for that entity.
Dude, that's awesome.
And yeah, good experience, good thing to have. Never hurts, obviously, to have your license.
Yeah. So let me ask you this, because you mentioned previously you've tried a bunch of different models out. Some is more training, some is less training. Someone was an agent, and like, this isn't my space, right? But I hear agents all the time. You're like, oh, I left that brokerage. I didn't get support, or I didn't like this, or I didn't like that. If you were an agent, what would you look for in a brokerage that's like, this is the spot for me?
Yeah, it really depends on how long you've been licensed and if you've been doing some deals. Like, I think that, if your first 12 months, a lot of training and stuff. So I started originally with Keller Williams, is who I was with. So like, I went to all their stuff, man. Right. So I just like did all that stuff. And so I think if it sort of depends, each broker, even a small brokerage, can have tons of training and support. And that's usually going to be reflected in like a split model or something. So it just really depends on your experience in real estate. If you've been investing for 10 years, now you just decided to get the license, like, that could be completely different of what you're looking for than somebody that's like got a 9 to 5 and they're like, just want to start part-time and do a few deals a year. So it just really depends. I think the model itself, for those people that are like considering to open their brokerage, or investors that think about maybe just getting a license and having, one or two people to help with like acquisitions or sales, if they're like wholesaling, but they want a different, vertical integration, keeping it just a small team, but then they can just capture more of the revenue of the listings or helping buyers or whatever. If it complements their existing business. So it just really depends, just like investing, what somebody's sort of bringing to the table to kind of guide them in the right direction.
Of course. And it sounds like on one hand, if you're getting more training, you're probably taking less from each deal. And then on the other hand, if it's like, hey, basically the broker's just there so I can do it legally, but I'm kind of on my own, you're more likely to take home a larger piece.
Yeah, correct. The agent would. Yeah.
Yeah.
Traditionally, agent, less training, less support. You're probably taking more home or more. And then teams,
That makes
right?
sense.
You could be on a brokerage with teams too, where, you know, you're splitting leads, you're getting all these lead flows, or, you know, if you're just gonna self-generate everything, you're obviously keeping more too. So I had some good referrals when I first ramped up, but I basically did it all on my own. And I think I did 12 deals first year and like almost 24 the second year.
Nice.
And then I just, you know, took off that hat, was like, I'm gonna go property management, got the residual income, very much more dependable, much more like scalable business in my opinion. And so that kind of became the core focus.
Yeah. I mean, speaking of, I want to ask you a question. So 5 years ago, let's go pre-COVID. Let's say 2019. Would you call Tampa a true cash flow market? Like people are going here to buy cash flowing rentals?
Yeah, because that was about when I bought my first primary was 2018, and still holding that one in Tampa Heights, and that was great. That was just like such a great time to get in.
Seriously.
And it was like I think the numbers were obviously like way, you know, better than now. And single family is obviously quite different from multi, but but if we're just talking about like single family house, yeah, it was definitely a much like those 3 years we doubled in size 3 years in a row. From I think it was going into 18, 19, 20. Those like 3 years was like crazy.
Yeah.
We went from like 25 units to like whatever it was, like 200 units or something really fast. Growth, or up to almost 300. And so it was a great time. And then the past few years still been like growing, but it's been like slow, you know, people just not buying as much, especially single family, right? Like hardly any, the numbers just don't even really pencil unless you're getting a good discount.
Dude, that was like exactly the question I was going to ask, because like I'm not super tuned into the rental market, but I do some DSCR loans, and I therefore get requests for this. And it's like, it's very rare in Tampa that I see a property that ratios, in other words, the debt service coverage ratio is 1.15x, right? Your rent is 1.15 times basically your PITI, which is not your cash flow. If you DSCR 1.15, then you're probably negative on cash flow or close to break even, like actual, you know, vacancy, maintenance, etc. Dude, I hardly ever see these deals, even a lot of times on like duplexes, even triplexes sometimes. And so I'm like, dude, do you think that Tampa is just like, hey, it's not a cash flow market and it won't be moving forward? Or do you think it's just like a question of rates, or it's an appreciation play now? Like, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I think if people grew up in other markets where like they should take a look at them, if they know the market really well, if they have family there, like, you know, certain parts of, you know, Tennessee or Indiana, like some of these areas where like if you have a support circle that you might be able to get some decent rentals, I think you should like consider other markets if it's like if we're talking rentals specifically. I think there's still opportunities here. They're just like super hard to come by. Like, you know, none of the single family stuff I see makes sense. And even the multifamily, like we work with a lot of the brokers, Franklin Street, CBRE. Like these guys, they'll call us because we manage, you know, up to 50 units. So they might be like, hey, what's your rent roll over there? We're comping something and we're going to take it to market. Or do you have clients looking to buy? And, you know, even their pro formas, you know, I'll take a look at. And that's something like from a property management perspective, I think our sort of profession's underutilized in that due diligence acquisition phase of like, make sure that the what you're getting proposed to as a pro forma is like realistic for the market, right? So administrative costs, the management fees, of course, CapEx, or just realistic expectations around what you're spending, because it's no secret that it's more expensive now than ever for maintenance and the labor costs, you know, labor and materials. And so that's something you have to factor in, where I don't think people are budgeting enough for that stuff on the front end.
You don't think brokers are putting together an appropriate budget on the pro formas?
Well, it just depends. And at a certain size, they sort of like break it out a little bit differently than if it was like a 4 unit. Like it's gonna, performance is gonna look a little bit different. It's gonna be sort of wrapped into a little bit more simpler idea of expenses. But yeah, some of the stuff like, you know, just small stuff, but it all adds up, right? The pest control and those costs. some of the routine stuff that like the current guy may not be doing. So it's, you just want to shake down. I think the biggest thing though I'd be concerned about is rent growth. Over the last, at least 12 months, rent's been softening, and we were at the broker owner last week, which is like National Property Management Conference just for founders all across the U.S. And so everyone's market is soft, declining,
Really?
either flatlining or decreasing in rents that they're getting on fresh new units. And we've had a few that have rented for less than the last tenant was in there for. Now it may only be $100 or something, but it's still soft, right? So I wouldn't, I would be very cautious with that 3% for the next 3 years, right? Like, I don't think that's realistic. So if I was underwriting a deal today, I would say like assume no rent growth for 2 years. And I would even buffer in like if they dropped by, a point or two just to be safe. So like from a lender's perspective too, I don't think like, and assuming that they're already at market rates, right? Not that you're buying something for $800 a unit,
right?
And then these should be 16, but if they're already at market, be very cautious if you're an investor, landlord. And that's what we're doing with our clients. A lot of our multifamily guys are like, hey, $50, no increase. I even have one client that's like, should we decrease the rent? I'm like, no, dude, don't do that. But it wasn't a lot, but I'm like, dude, then I don't get paid, right? Like, or we get paid on percentage, right? So like, you want to give me a pay cut? No, but it was only $50 difference. But I'm like, look, you walked him through the scenario. But time to be conservative on renewals. Properties going to market. So if you have a property that's going to rent for somewhere between 24 to 26, I'm always super conservative. So I'm like, boom, chop that thing to 24 right out the gate. Or if you do 2,500, drop it down to 24 in the first 2 weeks. And the national averages are like way over 40 days on market for the average rental. And so it'll ebb and flow throughout the year, but at least long-term rentals, that's super common now. It's, some market, and it could vary by price point, of course, asset style, class as well. But generally, if you price it right, I think at least right now you could still move it, and within 30 days at least getting applications. So our average is usually that 21 to 30 day mark, but we're having to be like aggressive with the clients on either the starting price or the reductions until we get what we need. So definitely it's not what it used to be the prior years where you could just sort of ask whatever you want and you would get it.
Dude, it sucks for me because I'm terminating my lease early. So I'm like on the hook for the next 3 months until it releases. So I'm like, y'all better be smart and like actually freaking be aggressive with price, because I don't want to pay 2 months of rent when I'm not here.
Oh yeah, because they're letting you like, hey, if we get a tenant, we won't charge you all the extra something. Yeah. No, like, I get that.
That's cool. Yeah. It's fair, but I'm like, I can't control what they list this thing for. I'm like, you guys better not be too aggressive. So talking about rental average days on market is like 40 days roughly, right? What are you doing outside of price to get stuff rented faster and make sure that you're not going to get the tenant that you regret?
Yeah, so a lot of it's, there's some basic things like application fees, pet deposits, like that sort of stuff. You want to make sure you're in the general guideline of what the market is. So like if someone's like, hey, what should I price as pet deposit or pet fees? I can't give you like specific amounts to sort of, be cautious there on like, price fixing, but you just look at the multifamily guys, right? Go to apartments.com, look at the big guys, Class A buildings. What are they charging for application fees, move-ins? Like get an idea if you're in the range of what's fair within the market, at least so that stuff's not overpriced. But aside from that, it's kind of like, it really depends on the units, the properties themselves, right? Like, and the whole value add right now is like, you want to invest as little as possible to get like the minimum viable product that still gets a rent that achieves what you want. You don't want to be dropping 10 grand, think you're going to get, an extra 150, 200 a month, because like it's probably not really going to happen that way right now in the market. So we're kind of looking as the units are coming up vacant. What's the minimum that we just need to do to kind of spruce this up? And even if it's like, not getting the ideal rent this year that the owner's looking for, instead of 1,600, we get, 15 or 1,450, but we're only spending, $1,500 on a turnover versus like $8,000, right? There's like this shake off right now of where like the value isn't there, in my opinion, to spend a bunch. So the pricing and then showings, right? Like we do a hybrid model. Self showings are available for residents, potential applicants, or in-person showings. So if a company's like really at this point, a company's outdated if they only do in-person showings. There's reasons behind that sort of statement. And, some people are gonna be like, oh, we want to have a personal touch with everything. But it's like, if I'm doing the podcast right now and then we get a call that a tenant wants to see this property down in Ybor in 20 minutes, who's going to be available? Nobody, right? It's impossible. So having flexibility around showings makes it really flexible for people to see it when they want to, there's a lot of good technology that we have, copies of licenses, all stuff that we get before somebody could like just self-show a unit. But that's, that's something that's obviously, the industry has been doing it for a little bit. A lot of these national companies, Progress Residential, a lot of these, like, you're never getting an in-person showing, right? It's all virtual.
Yeah.
That should be like, just to me, that's like a bare minimum standard that you as an investor, your property manager should have flexible showing schedules and some self-showing capabilities just for those time crunches. Or, if you're the leasing agent, you go out of town, or like you're an investor and you self-show it and you're going out of town for a week to Mexico, like, who's going to show the unit, right? So having that technology is just like, to me, that's like the bare minimum standard that we should ever, be doing if you own rentals, but a lot of people don't. So that's like a small example of how you can just help capitalize on the vacancy downtime.
That's crazy. Do you hear this leaf blower going on like right outside my place or no?
No, but I noticed that your mic started picking up your voice a bit better actually when that clicked in. So.
Oh, really? Well, that's good.
Kind of funny.
Yeah, I was like, I'm just gonna mute myself.
Sam Watson, that like guru on Instagram, tattoos and stuff. There was like a viral clip of like he's in some mansion. I think he's a fake guru, but anyways, the landscaper was like a leaf blowing outside, and he got so mad because like the audio was coming in on his video.
Yeah.
But I'm like, when you have professional setups like you and I, then it's like you don't get all the excess noise.
Exactly. $150 mic has solved all my challenges.
Yeah. Drop the link in the description below.
Yeah.
Your affiliates.
Everyone go and buy this mic.
Support the channel.
Official if you get it from my link.
Yeah.
It's kind of interesting to me. Like I don't know if you know this. So I managed a mobile home park for Brandon Turner's Open Door Capital company for a little while.
Yeah.
And, even on these Class D parks, we were doing all automated showings.
Mobile home stuff's crazy. We actually haven't really managed those before. That was the first wholesale deal I did, actually, was a single mobile home. One of my agents, though, actually, one of my leasing, she has a small park. It's like towards like, I don't know, Plant City or Sefner or somewhere over there. But yeah, like that's just like the technology coming in the industry for the rental market is crazy. Like the stuff that's available now for people that are self-managing owners that can take advantage of technology, or there's the management companies. I think it's a really exciting time to be in the property management space, specifically with what we're able to do and optimize and increase value to the owners without them having to necessarily pay more, essentially. And act more as asset managers, like than just like, go to my rental, like just go do these things for me. That's what I think makes us a little bit unique, is our perspectives on, having the mortgage company before, the architecture stuff, and it's like just running the meetups too. It's like we come to the table with a little bit different idea of like, oh, you want to you're raising capital for the deal. Like here's some ideas to think about. Like that changes. How do those dynamics change how we manage the property as well? Investor expectations. Are there GPs on the deal, LPs on the deal, like general partner, limited partner? I could sort of create friction too with how the management company needs to operate if there's like friction at the ownership level. But anyway, sort of got on tangent there. But
to your point, man, it's kind of equivalent. Like if you listed a property, you're fix and flip, and you're like, hey guys, look, I want somebody to buy this, but only if I'm there to let you in. Can you look at it? It's just like, dude.
Well, yeah, it seems funny when you mention it now, because it's like, dude, realtors been doing this freaking the e-box. Now I know, like, right, it's another agent that's supposed to be showing it. So most of the time that's sort of how those are restricted. But the manual lock boxes, agents are giving their freaking codes out when they're not supposed to and stuff. So it's like for the management company, we have protections like for different things if something was to happen on self-show. But yeah, that's what, again, these are like the basic things that I think people should be doing that, like, at least self-managing owners probably are not doing, at least, but most management companies I would hope are doing it. Cause it's like, we don't get paid unless the unit's filled, and we don't get paid unless the tenant pays, so interests are aligned. But yeah, that's what, like, we're trying to change sort of our educational content, sort of how we operate with our owners, to have much more of a, take somebody that's an accidental landlord that wants to be an investor. What do they need to understand about asset protection, estate planning, taxes, all this sort of stuff, investing with your self-directed IRA, like all these options. Whereas like property, like we as property managers could be looked at just a little bit different than just like, oh, this guy just collects my rent and kicks people out.
More of a consultant as opposed to just a box checker on, making sure that the property doesn't catch on fire. But I mean, dude, protecting yourself is easy. Just, put it in your personal name. Let the tenant know you own it. Easy.
Just let them Zelle you their rent every month.
Yes. Collect rent only through Zelle, and have a lease that you don't know where it's at, but it's got signs.
You bought it off what are like the zip lawyer, like what are those
like Rocket Lawyer or something.
Yeah, dude.
Like that.
Just got a freaking lease. And that's one thing I will say, like if anyone's watching this, like do not use the realtor lease, man. That stuff's garbage. Like it's just might as well light it on fire, throw it in the trash. But
really,
you're better off even just hiring a management company just to do the placement, which we don't do that anymore. We just do full service. But there's some companies you can hire that just do like the tenant placement part, and then you can self-manage after. It's like at least then you sort of get the benefit of a lease that's probably pretty good,
right?
Because that thing's junk.
I think that's what David Souza and his team does. I don't know that they manage. I think they just do placement.
Oh yeah, then so it might be a realtor team that is doing it, or maybe it's property management. But yeah, so that's kind of like what I think our value is to the marketplace, and then adding some of those due diligent pieces to the puzzle, and then you guys as lenders too. It's like is this realistic for what this stuff's going to rent for, right? So like I think if you're going into a new market, or just like definitely rentals, is like your property manager is going to have so much knowledge of the local area to just guide you like what to buy, what not to buy. So I almost feel like, especially in the rentals place, like you need to find a property manager first, and then you can find an agent, or that property management company might have somebody doing sales. But it's like, I see people buy deals that just don't make sense, and I'm like, dude, you should just call me, or like, could read the numbers.
Way better data than an agent. At least I think, from like the number of deals that properties that you're like have eyes on every single day. Dude, an agent, like if you do 20 transactions a year as an agent, like you're doing, it's decent. If we're only managing 20 doors as like a property management company, it's like, yo, dude, like that's not that much.
You don't have a lot of context. I mean, we'll still look at like MLS for data too, but then we'll also pull like what's internal to like what we manage. That's helpful for this, running comps and stuff like that. But yeah, it's just like, don't hire an agent to do property management stuff. It's a completely different ball game. And we have some agents that do placement, right, leasing for their client, which is fine. But it's just like, you're not getting the lease and a bunch of other stuff that is behind the scenes. But yeah, so I don't want to dog the agents. But it's just a completely different thing. Just like you would want property managers sell your, list your house.
Right. Yeah. Fair enough. So what about this? Picture if I like, let's say I'm the accidental landlord, and I'm like, yo, dude, I want top rent, and I don't want to deal with like vacancy and whatever. Like, should I actually go out and spend money on photos of the unit and like get it virtually staged, or is it like, hey, iPhone pictures with good lighting does the trick? Like, how important are photos in getting your place rented?
Yeah, it's super important. We pay for that as part of our leasing fee, so it's just included for our clients. But that's like, seriously, if that's the only thing you do for your property, and you're like your self-manager, you're like investor, landlord, just on your own or doing your own thing, like that's like the bare minimum bar. Like, if people aren't doing that, that's like you're wasting your time. Now the photos like that, obviously I just got the new iPhone because it's been like 4 years since I got one, but cameras are pretty good, but it's still, good photos. The drone shots are cool, helpful. And then like, Zillow at least will let you sort of optimize like a 2D floor plan and 3D as walkthroughs.
Wow.
Or like the Matterport camera system. There's some different cameras you do 360 stuff on.
Yeah.
And all that stuff helps, especially if you're doing like if you're doing the self-showing stuff, you're always talking to the people, but they're like, they can look at the video, they're going to go look at it in person. Like that stuff's super important. So that's like, again, that's like the bare minimum stuff that people should be doing for sure. It makes a huge difference.
Dang. Yeah. So like full on 3D drone photos for rentals?
Yeah, you can. They're like, our guy just includes it really. The drone's extra, which we don't do often unless it's like multifamily and we want to show, or like close to the water, or there's something like we want to show. But like the floor plans and stuff that it'll spit out is sort of included actually with the guy that we use. So it's cool. Just like benefit, it's just part of it. It's just kind of included the price. So we do like a bunch of volume with him. But yeah, again, that's just like
nice.
These sites are allowing you to do more and more with either the photos or videos you're providing, or just other information that you want to include in the listing itself. So like renters have like all the information they need, whether they're finding you on realtor.com or Zillow or whatever it is.
Yeah.
So they're making it more advantageous for investors or landlords to have all the relevant info for the residents on the front end.
That's hype. We're coming up on time here. So I want to ask one question kind of selfishly, just because I'm curious more than anything else. Not that it's relevant to me. And then we'll wrap up. But So I know like you're kind of involved in the commercial multifamily space. Brokers, you have conversations with them. Take a 20 unit, decent location, Tampa Bay. What's cap rate on something like that trading for right now?
I think like I think that we're still seeing somewhere in that like 4 or 5, maybe 6.
Really?
I haven't seen anything that's been like super sexy. I just lightly looked at a deal just this week from someone that was like a 6, but that's
Mm,
still still like, the asset style itself, it's up and set up, not new. So you're just
yeah,
buying stuff from either the 70s, 50s, maybe the
yeah.
20s, 1920s, right? So it's just like,
Jeez.
bro. So that's where it's just like the opportunity cost of like, let me just lend this out at 10% where you have no extra headaches of maintenance, the unknown, tenants not paying. It's just like the opportunity cost. So it's like, if you're not just making a decent clip, it's like just put that money in the bank at 5% and just continue
Yeah.
to wait for a deal versus like buy something that's like a 6, 7, 8. Because it's once you factor in everything else, you're getting smoked. Or
Yeah.
one thing
I
goes
mean,
bad, you're just like it's just not going to work unless you're like really underwriting on the front end, like heavy vacancy loss, maintenance. Like you're budgeting all that's like pretty heavy, and then you're getting like a 6 or 7. That it might be okay, but like I think generally how people are underwriting stuff, they're like they're just like cutting it way too close
yeah.
on what it needs to generate to really work.
I think just generally speaking, my dumbed down sense of this is like, yo, if cap rates are under the interest rate on your loan, like the deal probably is not going to work unless,
Mm-hmm.
to your point, there's a lot of value add or rent increase opportunity, because it's like, dude, it's pretty much the same math. Like,
Mm-hmm.
hey, I'm paying 7% for my money, but the calculated return on it, ignoring the loan, is 6%. I'm like,
Yeah.
that doesn't make
And there might be
sense.
like some tax benefits, right? You're like, oh, well, taxes or costs are blah, 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 like versus lended out at 10%. But it's like, that's for like somebody maybe a little bit more sophisticated or has a tax problem. But like, I think for a
Yeah.
lot of us, it's like, the deal just needs to pencil first. And then just like you said, like what if maintenance costs could, like, let's see these tariffs, come
Yeah.
down and there's some extra construction costs, 12 months down the road, and taxes and insurance are not going to go down. Right. So it's only going to get probably worse, and rents are just not keeping up. That's the other thing, is just
Yeah.
like, they're just not going to keep up. So even if the cash flow is now and you got a little house that you're making $400 on, I'm like, dude, in 2 years, you're going to be probably negative, like
Yeah.
maintenance
For real.
costs, taxes, insurance, rent growth stalling or going down. Like then you're getting just squished. So you just got to
Yep.
forecast, be careful.
Yep. So, speaking of, as we wrap up here, for the many people out there that need the consultation, need guidance, and need help with their properties, who ideally is it that you're looking to help with? Like what areas, what size properties, and then how do people contact you if they want to like chat with you about potentially doing having you do some property management for them?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so company's Outfast Property Management. We're most Tampa Bay, so I like to say, our preferred areas within like 45-minute drive around Tampa International Airport. So most of Hillsborough, most of Pinellas is where we like to stay, and mostly single family, multifamily. We'll do townhouses, we'll do single family. We don't do condos. We don't like condos or mobile homes. So multifamily, anywhere up to 50 units. We really like that sort of 5 to 30 is like a real like bread and butter. But offsite management is typically going to be within that, that count. And yeah, they could just go to our site. We have all our pricing, testimonials, case studies on our site. We got 260 Google reviews with 4.5, which is really hard to do for a management company because you just get roasted by your tenants, dude.
Yeah, especially the tenants. They're like,
But no, and then just finding me on Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram, and my cell phone, we can put in the notes or whatever. But it's just like, yeah, you reach out to the website, shoot us a message, find me on Facebook. I'm still heavily involved in the day-to-day, so we'll take a look at the property or something you're looking at buying and just see if it makes sense. But yeah, our pricing is pretty fair to what's in the marketplace, and I think we bring a lot more value and education content to the clients that work with us.
yeah, I was just gonna say, who cares about the price, dude? All about the value.
Yeah, well, that's just it, dude. It's like, it's just funny sometimes, like lose a client over like, $20 or something. And like, dude, that's kind of the tough thing too with property management, is there's so much we do behind the scenes that is our job for the owners not to hear about, where we're creating that value, right? Like, versus spending $2,000 on a plumbing repair, we got it done for 800 because this was like the extra troubleshooting we did, and like this is what we negotiated with the vendors. So it's like we easily pay for our services for a year, if not like way more than what we're paid, for sure. But Yeah, that's kind of the disconnect. That's what I think the industry hasn't done a great job of like as property managers, like communicating the different ways that we really add value and that we really pay for ourselves like tenfold, especially when it comes into those lower income, more challenging properties, like we do Section 8 too. And it's like, there's a lot of extra work that we don't charge for. And even more so when people are like, oh, these cap rates are great. I'm like, dude, you're buying the hood, man. I have property, dude, I have one property where like, I've never had this happen in 10 years where my cleaners are like, we're not cleaning that property. Like we just drove by and like, I keep, I conceal carry. I keep the guns on me, but you don't want to put yourself in a position like that. So it's like when we really try not to manage that stuff anymore for new clients is certain areas where you're just like, dude, it makes it so hard from leasing standpoint. People know it's vacant. They're breaking in, they're paintballing it. They're like, bro, it's like, I would say like, if you're buying rental properties, do not buy in local income areas. Wait till you can buy a better asset, hands down. Like the numbers never are as good as they seem when you're like, oh, the cap rates are like really high because you're buying in, there's a sketchy part. It never works out. Never does.
It's an art and a science. You can't just listen to the spreadsheet for sure. Dude, kind of a random thought here would be awesome. And I don't know if this is like easily implementable in your business, but like, annual report that shows all the stuff that you guys solved in the background, blah, 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 cost savings, and versus like, how much you paid. Hey.
Yeah. So like we do a monthly newsletter for our clients where we talk about like, I posted a little bit on one of them recently about short-term rental, like nightly rates and some other things. That was actually a snippet from my newsletter. And so, that's all sort of stuff that we're like working towards. And like, average work order cost and across the US has basically doubled in price over the last 5 years. So your average work order used to be like $250, now it's $500, right? And that was like just market sort of nationwide averages. And so it's like all these little things are things that we have to communicate, especially around maintenance, which is like, if you can't control insurance and taxes, like maintenance is just getting scrutinized so bad with, how are we working to bring that cost down, in-house guys, like how are we navigating that to make sure that like the numbers are still working as good as they can. But yeah, it's like that's part of what we're trying to do is communicate that stuff more and like, the amount of calls we get, messages we receive, I think last year we had like 40,000 messages on certain stuff from residents and all this stuff. So that's it. The data, the metrics, communicating that to owners that like what we're solving behind the scenes and what we're working towards. And, we may troubleshoot a maintenance issue over the phone that never gets a work order created that the owner never sees. And those we did that we just saved, $100, $200 trip charge plus, some extra supplies. And we just like, that's just part of what we do. Right. And that doesn't get communicated easily unless we're really proactive about how we're using the data to make better decisions. And a lot of that's around maintenance or vacancies, right? Like the two killers, for your investment is vacancy and maintenance.
Yeah. Don't blame the lender for your place not making money.
All right. I mean, you just got to make it look good on the spreadsheet. Then I got to execute.
That's right. Well, Jeremy, so much fun having you on, man. Pleasure. You are truly a wealth of knowledge and appreciate you coming on today.
Cool. Yep. Happy to help. Thanks for having me.
Awesome. Well, that wraps up this week's episode of Lever Up Your Life.